Welcome to Friday 15, everyone, with Master B2B. My name is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Hoare, my partner in our Thought Leadership series. The band worked right this time. They faded out gradually. What do you know, Andy? Welcome to another episode of Friday 15.
Good to be here. Good to be here. We had a great week at B2B Online. We're going to talk a bit about that. So why don't we jump right in? Some breaking news.
We sure did. Yeah, we can jump into our breaking news. If I could just find our handy dandy music. Here it is. All right, folks. Andy, I don't know if you saw this or not. This was all over the buzz waves at the conference this week in Chicago, but this happened outside of Chicago. Amazon denies tariff pricing plan after White House calls it hostile and political. So what happened here? Well, Amazon said it was going to start reporting on tariff increases, the dollars that tariffs added to the prices of products. There were rumors of this. They didn't announce it. Apparently the White House didn't like that too much, right? So interesting. And quote from this article here, Amazon spokesperson Tim Doyle told Axios in an updated statement after its initial denial, hey, we're not doing this. The team that runs our ultra low cost Amazon Hall store considered the idea of listing import charges on certain products, but he added this was never approved and is not going to happen. So this is sort of, I guess, a little bit of speculation, a little bit of rumor, but certainly freaked out the White House. What do you think, Andy? Any reactions?
Well, B2B Online, we talk to companies. We've been talking to companies for weeks now, and it seems like every B2B company, and I asked about this story, every single one of them said, yeah, we're showing the tariff pricing. So everybody is already doing this. It just, Amazon rankled, I think, the White House because they have such pervasive reach. Plus, they're in the tech industry where they're all trying to curry favor because they want to buy companies and not have the FTC or the DOJ go after them and block the merger. So they're walking on this fence, but don't fool yourself. Every B2B company is showing the tariff pricing. So that is not a radical concept.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously, talking to these companies at B2B Online, they're being very practical and about it. And they're saying, hey, we've got to increase prices in some areas just because our costs have gone up. And it's not happening across the board. A lot of these B2B companies we talk to in our community, Andy, are, they're manufacturing in the US, but oftentimes they have components that are coming from overseas. So it's really a mixed bag. So no, interesting stuff. And, we've been alluding to this earlier, we're going to be talking about this week and next week, sort of a report from the field, B2B Online Chicago 2025, close to 1,000 people. It was a really, really great event. Andy and I had a chance to talk to a lot of companies, both solution providers and practitioners, about half and half at the event. Today, we're going to talk about this debate we had at the conference. And the debate was, is the private equity model effective for the B2B industry? Which was such an interesting question, different one we've never tackled before. So private equity investing in traditional B2B companies, manufacturers, distributors. And we had this debate on stage, Andy, in front of the, it's a keynote debate. We had hundreds of people in the audience. We asked them to vote on what they thought, in our typical debate style format, our unwebinar format. This one was live, obviously. And, that was really interesting. You framed it up, the discussion really well, Andy. What did you, how did you set it up? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, this really surprised me. I think it surprised you when we were doing the research that according to Bain & Company and the pitch book, in 2023 and 2024, 60 to 70% of PE transactions were focused on B2B, the B2B sector, primarily industrial manufacturing, which that was shocking to me. I wouldn't have realized it was that high. And we talked about why, right? Because there's so much opportunity for operational efficiency. These companies, many of them are laggards. Many of them are, it's sort of go big or go home sort of situation with distribution. You can't be a medium-sized distributor in a world with a bunch of large distributors that have unit economic advantages, distribution advantages, geographic advantages. So you either have to be big or niche. And some of them have not come to that realization yet. And so they've fallen behind. So PE can swoop in, bring in their own management team, fix things up. And there have been some good, some success stories, right? But the funny thing was about this debate, and the reason we wanted to do it is because when you mention the word PE, you don't have to say private equity, just PE. There's such a It's almost like our political system. There's such a polar reaction to this.
Yes.
People are either 100% for it or 100%
Yeah,
against it.
right, right.
Do we not find that with the audience when we just ask them? I think I asked the question, how many people in this room have been touched, air
That's right, you
quotes,
did. Yeah.
touched by PE? Almost every hand went up.
Yes. Yeah, it was incredible. And this is perception, Andy, that PE, that that they're sort of just, coming in, they're sharks, are just gonna, come in and gut the business and fire everybody. And you showed this video, which for those of you listening, we're not gonna play the video here, but just to describe it to you, it's really funny. This perception of what a PE firm is, you've got this guy in a suit pushing grandma in a wheelchair towards a cliff, and then he drops her over the side of the cliff. Like, where did you find this video? It's so funny and people laugh. But I mean, that's the perception, right? Of that, hey, that their vultures are just going to come in and gut the business and take everybody out. And there is some some truth to everything, as there are truths to some truths to stereotypes. Yeah, there is some cost cutting and efficiency that often happens when a PE comes in, because again, to your point, these businesses are not often optimized, and particularly as you look at small to mid-market companies, that's the other trend, really, Andy, is a lot of these companies are run by families, or somebody who owns the business, who maybe is retiring, who's in the maybe their late 60s, early 70s, and needs to figure out what to do with the business. And they've only got some options, right? They can sell it to a big distributor, if it's a distributor, sell it to another bigger company, or pass it to the next generation. But what if the next generation isn't interested? And so PE becomes an opportunity to and that's the other major trend I think that's occurring, particularly in the mid market, with these firms. But there's been good success stories in this. I mean, you highlighted a couple here. One was Lowe's, right? Tell us about that one.
Yeah, well, Lowe's bought a company called ADG recently for $1.3 billion, and they used it to expand their market. They're going
Right,
more pro, as we know. They're more B2B than B2C at this point. And it was on the heels of Home Depot, and probably somewhat related to it, making an
right.
$18 billion purchase of SRS. I guess every company in distribution is named after, has an acronym in the name,
Seems like
ADG,
it, right?
SRS.
Yeah,
But they both did the same thing, which is they looked at an opportunity to expand their market.
that's
What's
right.
interesting is they could have bought these companies before. They knew about them. They were on their radar screen. But PE came into those companies, fixed them up, streamlined operations, focused them, and then flipped them to these larger companies a couple of years later, which is the perfect sort of demonstration of the PE model. Now, that's when it works really well. As
Right.
we know, it doesn't always work like that.
That's
And
right.
we highlighted a couple of failures. Do you want to tell us about the B2C ones?
Yeah, so the bunch of B2C failures we talked about, for example, Toys R Us was owned by KKR, Bain Capital, and went out of business, right? Over leveraged. There's retail disruption. There's a whole bunch of things that impacted that. Serta Siemens Betting was another one. With online retail brands came in and affected their business. Mervin's another one. These were all PE firms that invested in these companies, but they didn't succeed. And we've got a list of, we're just showing a small list here on the screen, and we shared it at the conference. There's a lot of companies that have failed after PE investments. So this is not a guarantee of success. Same thing on B2B side, Andy. You highlighted American Standard. What happened there?
Yeah, Bain Capital bought them. They were over leveraged. They made some poor investment decisions, and they ended up selling the company at a loss. Here was the thing, though, and this is why it's such a polarizing discussion. So
Mhm.
I don't want to attribute any ill will to Bain Capital, but they spent some money on this. They lost some money, right? So at the end of the day, they look around the partners table and they say, "Gosh, we didn't get a return on this one." But they go home and everything is fine, right? They'll make it up with another transaction. But what about the people who worked at American Standard? In some cases, they lost their jobs. They lost money, and it was real money to them. So that's why this is so polarizing, and that's why we wanted to have the debate. So in one case, they lost a bit of money, but they'll make up
Right.
for it later. In the other case, people lost their jobs, their livelihoods. It was pretty disruptive to them, and so that's why people either love or hate PE.
Yeah. Well, so we wanted to have a debate, and in traditional master B2B style, of course, we have to have two teams, and we brought in folks that could argue sort of that PE is effective, and others, the other team argued that it has challenges. Now, I was on team effective, right? Meaning that we think that on balance, PE is more
In
effective.
theory, that's correct. That's
Oh,
right.
be quiet, Andy. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. So my team, I brought in Mr. Money here, Chris Knockout Norwood. He was Montage Partners. He's a PE firm that has invested in B2B companies, military fasteners, and some other distributors. They've invested in and had seen some good success with. In fact, he sent us, a couple of exits they've done successfully. And so he was on my team along with the gangsta Gupta, and who's awesome. She leads e-commerce at Tesco Technologies. And in a news case, they were invested in by PE. And she demonstrated as she described that they've grown the business successfully. She talked about 25% growth last year from e-commerce while reducing expenses by over 60%. So think about that, right? The reduced expenses made it more efficient, at the same time grew and is investing in things she wasn't even thinking about, right? They've invested in digital marketing. They've invested in tools that she didn't even have on her radar before this PE firm came in and bought them and put them on her radar. So PE has value not only in dollars, but also in your thinking about the business. But anyway, that was my team, Andy. Who was on your team?
Well, then I had the team that actually put all this in proper context.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had Dale, the enforcer Edmond from Lipton Teas.
Okay.
And then John, the pulverizer Paler from E3 Omni. And John has both those guys have long careers. Dale was at Newell,
Yep.
Mercury Marine. John was the CDO at Rexel, also at Caterpillar. He spent 20 some odd years at Granger. So we have people who've kind of been through this, have been associated with, involved in, come out the other side of PE-like arrangements. And I think the thing that they argued was that the time frames don't match up. In fact, I think that was the first round, wasn't it?
In fact,
Yeah.
that was our first
Yeah.
round, which was all about time horizon. And, PE has this reputation, Andy, of, only looking at a 3 to 5 year, time horizon, not making investments. Whereas B2B, is more traditionally has longer time horizons, more conservative, heavy CapEx needs, slower innovation timelines. So the question we asked there is, are the timelines, compatible? Can a PE timeline, because they have limited partners, right? They have to exit their investments and return to their limited partners. So, they have to do that in a time frame which matches their own internal mandates. Whereas B2B doesn't necessarily have that. And we got down to things like, what are you investing in? And Chris made some good points, Norwood, around hey, look, we're investing in ERP. I think John Paler raised a point. Well, you're not going to invest in anything that's more than, what's the last ERP you invested in? And he's like, well, we're investing in one right now, as a matter of fact. So it was an interesting.
That was the discussion, right? Are they really serious about that, or are they just going to make it last until they flip the company? It'd be like buying a house and saying, okay, we got to remodel the floors, we got to replace all the appliances, or we could just put some polish on them,
Right.
make them look good, and let the next guy deal with that. And I think that's what the debate was about. And I think we had a clear winner in that round, though, didn't we?
Well, okay. So we asked the question: is PE's short-term approach compatible with B2B's long-term time horizon? That was the question. And we used my super advanced clapometer, right? We just used an audio thing to very, very scientific, very NASA approved.
But it was accurate.
Accurate
enough to declare a winner. Which I think was
okay, fine. So Andy,
right?
yes, Andy won that round. The audience said, yeah, you know what? They're not compatible, right? It's not. They don't work, and you won pretty handily that round, I suppose. So people thought that hey, PE's doesn't have kind of timelines that work in B2B. So that was interesting. Then we went to round 2, which is all about career growth, and this one, Andy, was the one you led. This was all about hey, once private equity is in, do they just come in and fire everybody, right? Can you build a career as an e-commerce executive in a PE-backed firm? Clearly Anu thinks she can and is building a very successful career. What did your team argue, Andy? What was the pathetic arguments you guys had?
Well, I mean, what I think the joke was, if you survive the first and second rounds of layoffs, it can be very effective for your career. So, I mean, that was no joke. That was what we talked about. Is if you can make it through, if you can find your way, then arguably it's a good for your career growth, because you can point back to things that were done. Because there's no question that PE firms are not going to sit on their hands. They're going to
Well,
make
yeah.
things happen. The question is, can they make it happen in the environment of B2B? Because, I think my team made the argument in the first round that these things take time because B2B is complex. You can't just step in, install an ERP, load all the product content, get the customer pricing right, get the custom catalogs right in like 2 weeks. Maybe in B2C you can do that because they don't have a lot of that stuff. But in B2B, it's a lot more complex, which means it takes more time, and that time frame is incompatible to some extent. So yeah, I think the point of this round was if you can make it through, if you can actually get stuff done, then it's good for your career. And that's why who won that round? You did.
I did. Thank you. Yes,
You
I did
did
win that round.
because Anu was very persuasive because she was living this right now. Other people on the stage were very successful people, so they all made it through. I think
Right.
if we'd had people in the audience or on stage who had made it through for whatever reason, they might have a different opinion about how PE affected their career growth.
Yeah, a bunch of excuses, Andy. Come on, you
But
lost.
congratulations to
Own
you.
it.
You won the
Just
second
own
round.
it, Andy. All right. So then our third round, we went into digital technology infrastructure. Now, at this point in the debate, we'd each won one round. So this was the tiebreaker, this last round here. We talked about digital technology infrastructure and that PE firms will often stick in this is Andy sandbagging and describing it because Andy writes the script, by the way, everyone, for the record. Often stick with existing technology versus inexpensive tech versus buying anything new because the ROI timeline on technology is too long. At least this is what Andy says, right? So we had this debate about do B2B companies when they're invested in by PE actually do they just they don't get any investment and it was an interesting debate because our team obviously argued that yes we now have more investment dollars that and this ERP example came up again. Chris kept talking about hey listen we'll make the tech investments if it's necessary, and frankly Andy, that is a lot of the benefit these PE firms can get from an investment in B2B. They're these companies are underinvested. So, but then your team argued something different, right, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, basically the truth, which is I think more often than not, the PE firms have a tight time horizon. And if something's
Yep.
completely broken, yes, they'll fix it. But they aren't going to make big, long-term, significant capital investments because they're not going to keep the company long enough. And at the end of the day, although Chris he thought he made this point that it makes it more attractive to the buyer. I don't think we all agreed with that. And I think the audience slightly disagreed with that one because I think their argument was in the end, they believe that the PE firms are going to triage and try and keep, again, back to my house analogy, just polish up the appliances, make the floor look good enough, and then pass the problem to the next guy.
Uh-huh. Well, I'll say, this one was close. So my clapometer. So my team should, we asked the question: do PE firms focus on short-term tech fixes versus long-term investments in digital? And my team came in when we asked the question. We came in at a 93 on the clapometer, and Andy Hoare came in at a 97. There's a 4-point difference. So Mr. Andy and his team won the debate, but this was a close one, man. Yeah, I think the
It
record.
was in all seriousness, this was a great debate.
It was a really good one.
I think, seeing these things live, I mean, there was a whole bunch of audience participation. It was a lot of fun. People got into it. And then people came up to us afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did to you. And
yeah,
I had people say, well, I was going down one path and I heard the arguments. I went down another path.
Well, Adrian Hartman said she flipped, man. VP of Ecom at JJ Keller. She's like, I completely flipped. I'm with you, Brian. Well, I'm like, you should have clapped louder. Come on, Adrian Hartman. Anyway, it was great. And so we asked the same question to our LinkedIn. Hey, is private equity good or bad for B2B companies? What's interesting is they had the right answer. They said 64% said good, only 36% said bad. So much.
Well, I think this just makes the point that you paid the check, you paid the bill for the click farm in Pakistan that was actually answering the question for you. So that's well done.
That's right. So anyhow, no, it was a fun and fascinating debate, folks, and we'll be doing that again in the fall at B2B Online, another live debate. I think we'll be talking to Amazon there, right? 1P versus 3P. So that should be a fun one. So anyhow, let's go on some announcements because we're past. We got our Nexus program, folks. Encourage you to sign up for this. Your personal B2B digital lifeline we're providing expert advice exclusively for B2B e-commerce. This is like an advisory or like a research type service, but it's specifically for B2B practitioners, and it's based on peer-to-peer referrals and experts who have been there, done that, to help you reduce the risk of your high risk decisions, custom research, custom events, as well as connections and quick answers to your questions. We will get you answers to your questions. You get a personal concierge. This is a great thing we just introduced. Andy, you just told me today we got another very senior level executive join us, where people are signing up for this. We announced it last month. So I encourage you to go to our website, masterb2b.com, click on Nexus, and check out the more description of it. It is a paid service, folks, just so you know, and it's practitioners only. We have our forum, which is available on our website, masterb2b.com forum. And go there and you can sign up for free if you are a practitioner. It is no cost. It is only practitioners. We have hundreds and hundreds of people in there. I was looking this week, Andy. We got like 5 or 6 major conversations going on there about e-com platforms and different PIMs and hiring, just a bunch of different topics. So good stuff there. And then we've got our roundtables coming up in the next couple of weeks. The last 3 of the spring. We've got New York City next week. Then we're going to be in Minneapolis and Los Angeles the week after. If you're in those markets, encourage you to sign up for those. Go to our website, masterb2b.com, and you can submit an application to join us. Very quick and easy. And then finally, I want to remind everyone that our podcast is available. These sessions are available via podcast on your favorite podcast service. Google, Spotify, Apple, on our website, YouTube. Denise Foley, Andy, told me this week, Denise Foley, SVP at ULE Group, that we are the only podcast she listens to and doesn't double the speed. So she listens to us at a real time. Denise, thank you. I guess we have a good cadence here. We're going fast. We're limiting Andy's reiteration. All good. So, right.
Well,
Andy,
that also means that she is 22 minutes for her then, right? Isn't it?
That's right. Yes. She
Other
bears
people
with us.
listen to it a time and a half to get it down to 15 minutes. So we want to thank Denise for her sufferance here, and for frankly, thank you very much for the compliment. We appreciate it.
It was great. So, folks, thank you again. Please rate our podcast, please. It helps us very much. We appreciate it. A positive one, of course. Anyway, we'll be back again next week. We're going to finish our recap of B2B Online Conference in Chicago. We'll share some more themes and things we heard at that event. But in the meantime, thanks for listening today, and we'll see you on our next episode of Friday 15.